Greetings, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Todd.
Hey, hey,
Hello.
hey. Some familiar faces there.
Familiar faces here. Give everybody a minute to get settled. Love to have your camera on. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Todd.
Familiar.
That beard's looking nice, Todd.
Yeah, it's starting to come in. You know, I guess it's been what, 2 or 3 months since I started growing it, and I still don't like it.
I think
But
it looks
nor am I inclined to shave it. I don't know why. It's just maybe it's some COVID-19 active rebellion.
There you go. I actually shaved yesterday, and this is how fast mine grows.
Oh, wow, that's it. That is
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah. I wish it grew in other places, but there you go.
My 15-year-old daughter is threatening, though, to sneak in my room in the middle of the night and like shave one side of my face, forcing me to shave because she hates it. Of course, it's embarrassing to her, but she's 15. Everything's embarrassing to her. So
All right. Well, it's great to see we got some repeat folks. We love having you guys. See Alika there.
all right.
Welcome, everybody.
And if at all possible, please turn on your camera. It's always nice to be able to see your faces and know that I'm talking to a person, not just bold text of a name.
All right, guys. So I think everyone's settled. So we'll get started here. Welcome to our AMA. This is our Pragmatic Institute Ask Me Anything office hours we hold every Friday at 1:30 Eastern. I'm Callie Frisbee. I'm the social strategist and content specialist here at Pragmatic, and I will be your host for today. And we want to welcome our product expert and Pragmatic instructor, Todd Middlebrook. Hey, Todd.
Hey, Callie.
Thanks for being with us.
Sure.
Before we get started, let's just do a quick plug to the Pragmatic alumni community. This is one of our latest offerings, members only group loaded with tons of fantastic resources. We have peer-to-peer engagements. We have access to instructors like Mr. Todd Middlebrook. And actually, as of the last 30 days, we've grown by 50%. So lots of quality individuals in there that are really engaging and sharing their wealth of knowledge. So that's really exciting. In the meantime, you can check that out at Pragmatic Institute/community. And if you act now, we are offering that 30% off. So definitely go ahead and check that out. But let's get back to it. Should we get started here, Todd?
Yeah, but before we do, Callie, I just kind of want to pick up on where you left off there on the community. It is so great to see the discussions that are going on with Pragmatic alumni and sharing how they have adopted the framework, of course, but I find it interesting in the discussions about how they've adapted it to their unique needs for their different types of products, the different industries, and those discussions back and forth and how people are learning from each other. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, agreed. And what I really love is just how everyone's really willing to share. I mean, willing to share their resources, really take the time and delve in to help people out. So I think it's great. It's been great to see all that interaction.
Agreed.
And in the meantime, if folks want to, we always want to hear your questions. So feel free to put them in the chat. You can send them to the group. You can send them to me individually. But we love hearing from you. So in the meantime, let's get started, Todd. So our first question comes from Benji. Benji just finished foundations and he has a question on my favorite, gap analysis. So just finished foundations. Really excited to see what the company can do from utilizing the gap analysis exercise. His question surrounds how to best execute it. So how many people is ideal to include? Should he be involving sales, engineering? Should they all be doing their own? Sort of what are your thoughts on the process there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. As an instructor, I'm also an alumnus of Pragmatic, and the gap analysis is a tool that I used myself in my previous life. And of course, have used it with our customers in what we call action planning workshops. And that for those of you that may not know what the gap analysis tool is it basically takes our pragmatic framework and those 37 activities that must be done at some point in the existence of a product in order to successfully product manage that product, to take it to market, altogether a market-driven approach. But those 37 activities, that's a lot of work. It's a cute little framework, but it's a huge amount of work. And I sometimes like to joke, if you'd like to fail fast, please do all of the activities at the same time. Right? That is definitely not what you want to do. You want to logically look at your organization and figure out where should we begin? What are the most important things? And for every organization, that will be different. So the gap analysis is a tool to walk through the framework and the definitions of those activities. And then getting to Benji's question is, how do you come to really an action plan based on this exercise? And boy, if you get 60, 70 people in the room, that'll turn into, what we call here in Texas, a goat rodeo. I mean, it's not going to be a productive meeting. But I do suggest that you get a group of across your key stakeholders. So I would say senior representatives if possible. I'm going to give you my ideal scenario. Leadership of product management, product marketing, leadership of development, yes, leadership of sales. There may be a key partner element, but whoever your main stakeholders are that your products are dependent on for the creation, design, marketing, and taking selling those products to market, having key representatives of those groups. I would suggest trying to keep that number down to more of an ideal of somewhere maybe between 10 and 15 people from those representative groups. And I've seen people take different approaches. You asked, should they all go off and do their version of a gap analysis? Some people do, but then come back and reconcile their answers. But the idea is whether you do it as a small group or start off with having each do a first pass themselves, but is getting the small group together. And, I'll tell you one reason we want stakeholders from different groups is, different parts of the organization have their own interpretation of what makes up product management, what makes up product marketing. You say those terms and they're almost like a Rorschach test. If you're familiar with the ink blot test that a psychiatrist would put up and say, Beth, what do you see when you see this? And you're like, well, I see a butterfly. And Eddie says, no, I see a chalice. We all bring our own interpretations. Well, by getting these stakeholders from different parts of the organization together, we can walk through those definitions and really come to terms with this common language, common definitions of the activities, and do not undervalue that aspect of getting everybody on the same page of what the work entails. But then going to that next step and trying to understand, okay, well, how does this work in our organization? Who should own this work? Come to terms with defining the roles and responsibilities of who does what in regards to these activities. And then most importantly, after that is, after we understand those definitions, saying, okay, well, knowing where we are in our products, knowing where we are as an organization, which of these activities are the most important? They're all important. It's not an argument about that, but which ones are the most important? Are we about to plan a product launch? Are we about to release a product? Are we about to define a new release? Different areas or different activities of this framework will have higher importance, and we should focus on those. And it also gives us an opportunity to assess the strengths of the organization in doing this work. So it is a team activity as a best practice, but a small team and people that have visibility across the organization, and I would say some level of authority. That's ideal. I'll tell you what happens is a lot of product teams end up having to do this for themselves. and then having to try to bring in others or to present it to their leadership and then try to reconcile it with them. It just really depends on where your organization is, how much buy-in the organization has with adopting this framework. But regardless of the approach you take, the goal is still the same and can be easily accomplished to, basically take an elephant and chop it up into bite-sized, prioritized morsels.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think that, we get a lot of questions based around like the implementation part of it, right? So like, we've identified our gaps, we've identified our issues, but like now what do we do with that? Can you kind of take us a step or two further?
Well, and that's a great point. At the end, we want to come up with an action plan. We want to know, what do we need to focus on first in regards to these activities. We want to assign ownership. And by the way, when I say ownership, I mean, who are we going to hold accountable for doing it? It doesn't mean that they're not going to be collaborative with other parts of the organization, but at the end of the day, who's responsible? Or, I worked at Microsoft for 10 years, and in my team, we used the term, who's the BOL? I don't know if anybody uses that term. Whose butt is on the line, right? That, you got to have somebody's butt on the line, but even though we may be in partnership with them. But to finish answering your question, we need to come up with an action plan of what do we need to do, who's ultimately going to be held accountable, and a deadline, a timeline by which to accomplish it. And, I don't want to belabor gap analysis, but I will finish and say it's not a one-off tool. You don't use it to come up with a plan and be done with it. You want to go back quarterly because, hey, guess what? Based on the life cycle of your products, different activities, hey, we weren't doing a launch last quarter, but we're going to do one this quarter. So different activities have a higher importance. You also can reassess the decisions that you made on ownership. Maybe that didn't work as well as we thought in the conference room. So let's tweak those ownership. And of course, we want to continue to reassess our capabilities and see that, are we getting better at these important product management and product marketing activities? So not a one-off experience, I would say quarterly for a while. And I'd say that customers that have been implementing Pragmatic for a long period of time, at least do an annual review and revision of their action plan in regards to the framework.
Yeah. No, I think that you gave some great strategy there. So Benji, hopefully that is helpful. We have a question from Alika. Alika is actually on our call today, Todd.
Okay.
Alika asks, she needs some tips and hints to get an inside out product leader to testing value or willingness to pay with at least one client friendly. Seems like ego's getting a little bit in the way. Alika, feel free to unmute if you want to chat through it a little bit.
Yeah, so it should have said we've got an outside in, or no, an inside out product leader. We're trying to get to outside in. And I don't know if you have any tips, because we're kind of stumped with this one leader.
So, Alika, just want to make sure, I'll kind of paraphrase it to make sure that I understand the scenario. Product leader that believes that they know what the right price of the product is?
Yeah, well, what happened is they picked a price, market said, no, we're not paying for it. And so we actually just this week, actually 2 days ago, launched a client willingness to pay process. And the biggest takeaway we asked all the product lines to do was they need to be testing this with 3 to 5 friendlies. That you cannot use sales as your go-to end all be all proxy. You've got to go to the market and get some feedback so that you know if you're on the right track. Sales is a starting point, but you've got to test with some friendlies.
There's this little common sense, but although we don't often stop and think about it, going to sales and asking them what is the right price to pay. Of course, we expect them to be using the feedback and knowledge that they've gained from the people they've been selling to. How many of you are honest with the salesperson? I mean, if you're buying a car and you're on the car lot and they're asking you, hey, Alika, what's your budget? You know, when are you looking to buy? You know, we know we're, you know, right out of the gate, there's a negotiation and you don't show all your cards. So why do we believe that the feedback that the sales team's getting is 100% accurate? And this is no fault of the sales team, right? It's really that human psychology of what people are willing to reveal about themselves. And look, pricing, as you obviously know from the way you phrased your question, is about understanding the psychology of value perception. And with that psychology, if they're not willing to share, but you could start by, you know, having a conversation like that, saying, you know, do we believe that they were being open and transparent with the sales team if that was our one data point? But I don't think that's really the answer to your question, in the sense that, you know, I'm sure this is not the only situation that you've encountered where somebody inside the organization thinks they know best, right? And
Exactly.
And the problem is, especially I use the word leader, if this person's got more political power than you, then your opinion versus their opinion wins, right? You're not going to dissuade somebody who's got more political power that, that, you know, he or she is wrong. The only way we're going to be able to do it is by gathering facts. And whether the leadership is asking for those facts or not, going and getting a handful of facts. You mentioned that you went out and the market rejected the price.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate to say that we tried to sell them the product at this price and we lost
They
the
said,
deal?
no way. They actually said, no way, we're not paying $10,000 for it.
So, and has that experience been conveyed back to this leader?
Oh yeah, the leader knows that firsthand, and I cite that, we're both director levels, I cite that back to the GM as evidence, like you're saying, gathering facts, that we're not establishing, you know, outside in value. What we did is we established inside out value, and you know, we need to change it up. So now they've actually gone and worked with sales again. And I've gone through now trying to influence her. She has another director reports to her. I've attempted to tell the other director, and now they've gone to a tiered model and lowered the price. And so I as a follow-up, because some of this happens through IM, I said, oh, will you be testing this with at least one friendly? You know, I've just been asking the questions, because if you don't, you know, yeah, sales is one data point, but what's the client saying about it?
Well, you know, that original point that I tried to make somewhat humorously may be a key point to bring up. What makes you think that they're going to be honest with the people that they're negotiating with?
Okay, I like that. Okay, I like that. Thank you.
I mean, and I would turn it, yeah, are just like I did with you. Are you honest when someone is selling to you and it's a big purchase, expensive purchase? When you haven't made up your mind, are you going to tell them what you're willing to pay? No. I mean, at the very least, they're going to negotiate.
Sure.
So,
okay. All right. I love it. Yeah. I love
then
it.
I'm done. There's your perfect answer. No,
no. Okay, great. Thank you. That was actually enough. I think to move the needle. You know,
I do like what you're doing. I do like the idea of what you called friendlies. If you can get data points other than what came through sales. And if anybody thinks you're criticizing sales, go over and above. This has nothing to do with our salespeople or how honest they are or how good they are at asking questions. It's the buyer's problem that they're not going to be honest with the salesperson. But go get some data points from people that you haven't sold to, and get an idea of that value perception, and, you know, whether it's economic value or what are the attributes. that they see valuable. And 2 or 3 of those, maybe outside of that sales lens and the argument that we just discussed, might be helpful. That would be my next step.
Okay, great. I wanted to say something about the previous person's question.
On the gap analysis?
Yeah, because we have a bunch of a wide range maturity level of product managers in our organization. And the more junior ones, they do need to, with the framework, they are hankering, not just hankering, they're giving us direct feedback that they're very overwhelmed by the framework, because what the framework doesn't do is it doesn't say what to do when. And if I was in Pragmatic's shoes with your community, I would like push out a survey to find out how many other people, because what we're doing is we've got kind of a product office, an enterprise. We're going to put something together, because what's happening is it is impacting adoption and use of all these code standards and best practices, because they are so overwhelmed. They just don't know when to use what checklist, even though we've attempted to coach them, but now we're going to have to solve that, crack that nut a different way, because we're still getting that feedback like 8 months later.
Well, thank you for that feedback. It's part of the problem with that is we're not a process, we're a framework, and it does not prescribe step 1, step 2, step 3. But I will tell you that most successful organizations that have implemented Pragmatic end up creating a process or incorporating it into a pre-existing process of what do we do first? What are the outputs from that stage? How do they feed to the next stage? What are the decision criteria, stage gates, for example? It's difficult for us to be overly prescriptive, because there's early stage companies, there's multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies at a different level of maturity and at different stages of their product life cycle. And the right place to start is going to be different for them. But what we absolutely agree on is that we need to provide better assistance in helping people come up with that plan. And I don't know if you have seen, we have invested in new product offerings called labs. There's the teaching, the courses that we teach, and then there are labs that we can come in and literally help somebody do something like create a positioning document. And there is a roles and responsibility and action planning workshop labs that we can come in and help define what would be the right process and the right roles and responsibilities and the right prioritization for those organizations. But it's interesting, we were talking about the community, and there are quite a few dialogues on just this topic about, hey, where did you begin? And it always starts with, well, we were just about to plan a product launch, and as a result of that, we started here, and conversations such as that. But thank you for that add-on for the question of I can't remember the name of the person who asked that first question, but thank you for that. Benji, thank you.
Benji Thomas. No, thanks for that. And Todd, I think you make a really good point. I mean, I think that those labs are really, really beneficial. I mean, we give free assessments that really can come in, and we can tailor, the plan of action, right, for your particular company and your individual needs, or sort of where your goals are. So I think that's a great resource to explore, Leica. Our next question comes from Ivy. Ivy's also on our call today.
Hi,
Ivy asks, is there a standard or industry recommended hierarchy among capabilities, features, and EPICs, or are they interchangeable?
Read that to me one more time.
Yeah, or Ivy, I see you're off mute. Do you want to explore
Sure.
that a little bit more?
Sure. Firstly, Todd, it's great to see you here. Last year, I attended your foundation and build class. I love it.
You know, what's so funny is I've been an instructor for Pragmatic for 6 years, and I am no better at remembering names than I was at the beginning. But what has been surprising is how many faces I end up remembering. And you looked familiar with me, but I was teaching in India just about a year ago, and a young lady came for my second day of the class, and I said, "Welcome back." And she stopped and she says, "You remember me? Because you taught my class a year ago in another city in India." I'm like, "Oh, I thought you were here yesterday. I just knew I recognized you." But it's good to see you again, Ivy.
Thank you. You're a visual person. I'm glad that you remember the faces. I'm honored. So the reason I ask this question is when we are doing bottom-up planning, like quarterly planning, we see a lot of terms like initiative, epics, capabilities, features. And there isn't much consistency around how these terms are used. So when people are expected to put together the slides, they're confused, especially for people who are new to this organization. And there isn't a standard definition from the product organization on these terms. So I was actually tasked, I'm not part of product, but I was tasked to put a definition around these terms. I wanted to pick your brain if there are any industry standard on the hierarchies between capabilities, features, and epics, or they're just interchangeable.
Well, the thing is, you're not going to find those definitions in product management terminology. You're not going to find those definitions in the pragmatic framework, because that is language that is being used from a development, design, and engineering perspective. And so the different methodologies, whether it's variants of Agile, Scrum, design methodologies themselves come up with using some of those are synonymous terms and they're different terms. They have their own definitions for them. If what it is we're building and how is it going to work and what is the design of it. This is a generalization, admittedly, but I would call that kind of spec language, specification language, development, engineering language. Those are descriptions of how the product's going to work. Product management language in this context is things like what are the problems that we're wanting the product to solve? Who are the users that have those problems? We can group these things up in something analogous to epics. There's a user may have a problem of every Friday I need to generate this report and send it to my boss at 5 p.m. or she'll get angry with me. That might be a requirement from product management that we solve that problem. But there may be a bunch of other reports that same person has. We could group those up together and present them to development and say, here is the sales reporting group of problems that we're wanting to solve for this part of the market. Now, what capabilities, what features do we need to build to be able to automate that report and gather the right data, and what database structure do we need to create? Are descriptions in the spec of what needs to be built. So you're not going to find from us clarification and definition, but what I would do is there a hodgepodge of different development methodologies in the org, or is there a particular development methodology that they've, and I'm going to do air quotes here, standardized on? I'll explain my air quotes in a moment.
We're using the Agile methodology, and there's some I searched on the internet some definitions around these terms. It seems like different organizations, like say SAFe, have different definition. I feel that just leave me more room to, consolidate or or, since as you mentioned, if there is no standard definition from the product side, then
Right.
we can just pick a term. This is how I feel about it. Like, if we all agree this is how we use it and have it being consistent within our organization, that would work.
Yeah, I think you've got opportunity, since you've been tasked to do this, to cruise the internet, look at different examples of how other development organizations have done it, and then pick and choose what works for you and define standard definitions. The reason I did the air quotes is, like you just said, with scaled agile. Agile's not a thing, it's derivatives, and even within agile, people have different definitions. I definitely believe every organization needs to standardize on a methodology, standardize on the language. And, we teach a common language for product management and product marketing. If the methodologies they have aren't giving them enough language that is standardized, then create one that works for you and then advocate for that. But please don't use standardized on the development language when talking about product management, though. Right? If we're just talking about building features and functions, we don't know if we're actually solving real problems for real people. One gives you the other. You have to understand what those problems are to get to what are the right features or capabilities to deliver. Did I get on a soapbox? It sounded like a soapbox. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Todd. That's very
insightful.
Thank you.
Good seeing you again, Ivy.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, Ivy, thank you for the question. We're happy to have you with us today. And speaking of agile, here comes a question from Candace. It's actually funny enough, I saw this in a discussion thread in the community about agile versus waterfall. So Candace, if you're a part of our community, absolutely check that out. There's a lot of good food for thought there. But this one comes from Candace. What's the biggest differences between waterfall and agile? And are there any cases when it's clear to utilize one over the other? What are your thoughts, Todd?
So waterfall is a bigger word. Agile's no, I'm kidding. So you got to realize that I'm coming at this from a product management, product marketing lens. Those are two different development methodologies, and I can't claim a preference for the class of waterfall development or agile, because just in case you're not aware, agile breaks things up into bite-sized development chunks and deliver on these things. But it's really hard to build an airplane in little iterations and chunks. Waterfall is a better method to build something big and interrelated like that. But agile has this fantastic ability to, as the name implies, all the derivatives to not get locked into a path, but can be agile and can change and evolve. And it's got so many great ability to have working code that we can go get market feedback on and make sure that the decisions we're making. So there are advantages and disadvantages. And part of my air quote there was in the discussion with Ivy is I meet so many organizations in my travels that will say we're agile. One in particular said they were agile. And then as I was talking to them, I found out their sprints were 3 months long. and they still call them sprints. I was like, well, shouldn't you call that like a saunter or maybe a slow walk? But no, they still call them sprints. But they had a product that was a hardware and software combo, and they needed to evolve it. So I find that many organizations are really a hybrid of agile and some aspects of waterfall. I will tell you from a product management perspective, the differences. I mean, how does our relationship with an agile team work versus our relationship with a waterfall team? Product team is, in our methodology, is responsible for figuring out what could we solve in product, determining what should we solve, what would be a good business, what are the most important things to solve for the market, and then responsible for delivering those as some type of requirement to the development team, the design team, to go design and build. If they are waterfall, which 99% of my career from IBM and Microsoft and startups, I worked for what you'd call waterfall. They wanted all those requirements in a big document that I called my market requirement document. All of those things delivered, 500 different requirements for the next release of the product. They giggled. I didn't understand why they were giggling. It's because they knew right out of the gate I was not going to get all 500 of those requirements, but they're going to go back and ask questions, and we were going to negotiate that list down to some, this is what we could do of your list by that date you want to build a product. There may be a big list of those, but if you're dealing with an iterative development team, which includes Agile, what they want is some small chunk every 2 or 3 weeks. Those sprints, those iterations, those scrums, or if you work for the company that I just mentioned, they want the requirements every 3 months in their sprints. But it's really a rhythm or frequency, but the job is the same. It's just how often do you do it? Could be twice a month cadence or some others, or it could be once a year. But as classes of development methodologies, they both have their advantages and their disadvantages.
Yeah. And I again, Candace, there's a lot of good conversations happening in the in the pack about this exact subject. So definitely check that out. And I just want to remind everybody on our call, we got about 5 or 10 minutes left with Todd. So if you have any more questions, feel free to share them in the chat here. We certainly want to get to them. But in the meantime, shall we talk a little bit about end of life, Todd?
Mine or somebody else's? Or
Products.
Okay, I thought things took a turn for the morbid. Okay, so okay. Product, end of life.
This one's from Corey. So Corey says, we're thinking of saying goodbye to a product that has simply become over antiquated and too expensive for us to continue to offer. Curious for some best end of life practices and any suggestions on how to implement them.
So I'm sorry, is this person on the call?
This person is not. This is Corey who wrote into us, Corey M.
Oh, I want to ask so many questions of Corey to try to answer this more concisely. Like one of the questions I'd love to ask is if you're, I don't like morbid terminology, end of life. I like sunsetting. Doesn't that sound more positive? If we're going to sunset a product, I'm curious is there a replacement product? If there's this old archaic version of product A and we've created a new product A, then this question is about migration of customers that bought old product A. How do we get them to new product A? I worked at Microsoft, worked around Windows for my last really quarter tenure there. We had this problem with Windows, right? How do we get people on the next version of Windows? And when I was there in as late as 2013, the largest percentage of the install base of Windows clients was still Windows XP, which was released in 2000. So they hadn't adopted Windows Vista, Windows 7, or Windows 8, and we were on Windows 10. And of course, Microsoft didn't want to support all of those versions and would also like you to buy a newer version and get some new money from you. And we had to define a end of life, there I used it, a life cycle policy. How long will we support versions of our product? You cannot just say we're going to kill something. You have to give the customers of that product a ramp, a time to prepare for the implications. And and by the way, you can look up, there's a lot of companies, including Microsoft, that reveal their support policies in a lot of detail about what they're doing and what those dates are and the periods of time that, for example, you get, updates and bug fixes for, I'm making these numbers up, for 4 years. But after 4 years, you only get high security vulnerability bug fixes. But then after 7 years or whatever, you get no additional support. It needs to be defined. It's got to be communicated in advance for those customers to be able to prepare and make the right decision. What's also great about those dates is it creates a burning platform, right? They know that they're going to have to jump at some point, but it's not, they have to make a decision right now. They can plan accordingly. So if the question is just getting customers off of that product because we don't want to sell it anymore, we don't want to support it anymore, that advice would hold. If it is the yes, but we also want to get them on our new version of Windows, or we want to get them on our new A, you then need to come up with a migration strategy that is really identifying the customer base and knowing this is, let me clarify something. When you have a replacement product, that means retaining those customers is important to your business strategy. You don't want them to just jump off. You want them to jump from the burning platform to the new platform. And often, well, even I think how it was worded, we don't want to support this anymore. Getting them to move, they may not want to move. In fact, this is what we heard. Why should I get off of Windows XP? It works perfectly fine for my business. You want me to move for your reasons, vendor. And so if we're forcing them to do something that they don't want to do, and we want to keep them, then we need a migration plan that will mitigate those risks. And I would not try to get all the customers to migrate at the same time, but to really kind of segment your customers into kind of different groups based on their likelihood of getting so angry that they would leave you. And I would save that population of customers for last and give them the longest period of time to get off. And then I would try to go after that first group that is probably the least likely to get angry and leave you, and target them. Then maybe like the middle of the road group, and then only go after the biggest, most important to our bottom line customers, make them migrate last.
Yeah.
And by the way, you probably made the replacement product better by the time you're going to ask them to switch.
That happens, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple more minutes, but I do, Todd, are you open to answering one more?
Sure.
I want to fit this one in because we had a good conversation with Cindy last week about customer advisory boards. The question was surrounding how do we convince our, people to want to be a part of it and sort of what's in it for them. So this person asks about customer advisory boards, but more so in how to best leverage them. So how can I best leverage our VOC and customer advisory boards in my software company? I want to be sure we're listening to more than the noisy 20, but also utilizing their feedback as much as possible and in as many places as possible. So what are your thoughts on that?
Believe it or not, that is a huge question. Let me kind of handle it first, kind of from a tactical perspective. Love cabs, customer advisory boards, appealing to our customers to get together in some fashion and volunteer feedback or give us feedback on things that we present to them. Hey, here's the roadmap we're thinking about. What do you think? Here's the feature set that we're considering putting in the next release. What do you think? And then even more kind of open-ended, well, what would you like us to do next? but I will I like to say right out of the gate though, be really careful with how you define the cab to the possible participants. Yes, you're going to say, I think embedded in the question is how do we get people to want to participate? They have an opportunity for their voice to direct and influence the direction of our product. And for typically some subset of our customers, that is appealing in and of itself. If you want to get more out of the product, then help us understand what that would mean. But the danger of a cab, and your instructor got himself in this trouble, was you've got to position as your feedback is important to us. We want to listen to it, but that does not mean everything you say we're going to do. I left it too vague, and I had customers came back that said, hey, I participated in that cab. I told you that you should make the product do A, B, and C, and you didn't do it. You broke your promise. I want you to avoid that. So what you want to do is say, position it in a way that your feedback is an important channel. We are going to take your feedback and it will be influential in the direction we go, in addition to the other research that we do and the other knowledge that we collect to help define our roadmaps. But it's not one-to-one. Everything they tell you, you're not going to do. Then there's the questions about, best using this information, documenting what they tell you. If you just try to remember what discussions were had and what were said, put some concerted effort in trying to capture what they say, the language of what they say, so that it can be communicated clearly when you go back to your organization. So, document not just high-level reports. And then, but there was this aspect to the question, I think, about we don't want to just listen to the noisy 20%. By their nature, customer advisory boards are noisy 20% channels. For those of you that may not have taken a pragmatic course in your history, we call the noisy 20% the population of your target market that are enthusiastic about providing you feedback. They're the ones who open up customer support tickets and tell you what's broken. They're the ones that open up enhancement requests. They're the ones that attend customer advisory boards. They often are people that they see something in it for them. They're passionate enough to give up their time to provide their feedback. Their feedback is important. The quiet 80% is the rest of the market that for some reason has not offered up your opinion. So cabs are, and I'm generalizing, but most of the time they are positive, enthusiastic, yet noisy voices, and they may not represent the rest of the market. So it's critical to listen to the feedback from customer advisory boards, but supplement it with what we call Nahito. That's nothing important happens in the office. That is going out and trying to find quiet voices, customers that don't participate in the cabs, proactively going out and soliciting their feedback, even though they didn't offer it to you. That's also talking to people that aren't customers, because guess what? Cabs, it's in the name, customer advisory board. These are people that have already bought your product. And yes, for customer retention, for renewals, we if that is an important aspect of our business, we have to make sure that we are listening to our customers. But if we want to grow our business, if we want to take our product and maybe sell it to a new market, a new industry, or if we want to find new product ideas over and above the one we've already sold, you need to find non-customer voices in your industry too, and supplement what your customers are telling you to do with the voices, the quiet voices, where you're wanting to grow your product, or even non-customers in your existing market segment. People that, you know, I sometimes say, you can't ask your customers what you need to do differently in your product to make new people want to buy it. They can't tell you that because they already bought your product. So if you want new people to buy your product, you've got to go listen to those people and find out, well, why haven't they bought your product already? They may have examined it, and they may tell you, well, I didn't buy it historically because it didn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? Let's go do X, Y, and Z, and that might be the magic pill that makes unlocks some untapped part of the market or another market. So I apparently like to talk a lot. I'll just summarize that answer is you got to supplement cabs and any other customer information with proactive effort to solicit information from the rest of your market.
Yeah, I know. I think that's great. And I'm glad that, thank you for giving us those extra 5 minutes, because I want to make sure we got Ruben's question in there. So Todd, as always, it's such a pleasure having you. Thank you for
likewise.
Your brain. And to everybody, we love having you guys as well. You know, join us every Friday. We're here 1:30 Eastern. Check out our events page on our new website. We just launched our new website. It's beautiful. We have tons of product chat offerings coming as well. So, you know, pop in, come late, leave early. We just want to see you here. So thanks to everybody and enjoy the long weekend.
Thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your day. And thanks, Callie, for running this.
Thank you, Todd. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Bye, all.
Have a great weekend, everyone.